do? Are they over here to be nice to us and teach us how to be good Democrats?
So you see a moral equivalency between the West and Islamic fascism?
For some people, some radicals on each side, that when we impose our will with force by a few number of people, not the American people, I'm talking the people who have hijacked our foreign policy, the people who took George Bush's foreign policy of a humble foreign policy and turned it into one of nation building, which he complained about.
The president himself?
The president himself has changed the policy. You know, I mean, he ran, I like the program he ran on, and that's what I defend. And, but all of a sudden, and it didn't change after 9/11, it changed at the first meeting of the cabinet, according to Paul O'Neill. He says immediately what was on the table. When were we going to attack Iraq?
You mentioned on September 11th, a former aide of yours, Eric De Niro, said this, quote, when September 11th happened, he just completely changed, talking about you. One of the first he said was not how awful the tragedy was. It was, quote, now we're going to get big government. Was that your reaction?
Well, I'm surprised you would quote somebody like that. He's a disgruntled former employee who literally was put out. But yes, I thought that...
He said he quit because he disagreed with you.
Yeah, no, the point is, Randolph Bourne says war is the health of the state. I believe that statement. When you have war, whether it's a war against drugs, war against terrorism, war overseas, the mentality of the people change, and they're more willing to sacrifice their liberties in order to be safe and secure. So yes, right after 9/11, my reaction was, you know, it's going to be a lot tougher selling liberty. But I'm pleasantly surprised that I'm still in the business of selling liberty and the Constitution, and there's still a lot of enthusiasm for it. So that all the American people don't agree that we have to have the nanny state and have the government taking care of it. So I have been worried. I might have been too pessimistic immediately after 9/11, because in a way it has caused this reaction and this uprising in this country and say enough is enough. We don't need more Patriot Acts. We don't need more surveillance of our people. We don't need national ID cards. We don't need the suspension of habeas corpus. What we need is more freedom. So in one way I was pessimistic, but in another way now I'm more encouraged with the reception I'm getting with this message.
And you actually go further. You said this, abolish the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Central Intelligence Agency and dismantle every other agency except the Justice and Defense Departments. And then you went on. If elected president, Paul says he would abolish public schools, welfare, Social Security, and farm subsidies.
Okay. You may have picked that up 20 or 30 years ago. It's not part of my platform. Matter of fact, I'm the only one that really has an interim program. Technically, a lot of those functions aren't constitutional. But the point is I'm not against the FBI investigation in the proper role, but I'm against the FBI spying on people like Martin Luther King. I'm against the CIA fighting secret wars and overthrowing government and interfering.
Would you abolish them?
I would not abolish all their functions, but
What about public schools? Are you
okay,
still...
but let's go with the CIA. They're involved in torture. I would abolish that, yes, but I wouldn't abolish their right and our requirement to accumulate intelligence for national defense purposes. That's quite different.
But if you eliminate the income tax, you take away half the revenues for the federal government. What you're left with is the Defense Department, Social Security, Medicare, and pensions. Everything else is gone. So you have to start making choices if you're going to keep
all right, we can. The big one is overseas expenditure. You have to develop a transition. You have to start paying down the deficit, balance the budget. But you have to save. I believe the most reasonable place to save is on foreign policy, hundreds of billions of dollars, because into trouble. It ruins our defense is poor now. Then the Department of Education, we elect conservatives to get rid of the Department of Education. We used to campaign on that. And what did we do? We doubled the size. I want to reverse that trend.
What about
That's
public
what I'm
schools? Are you still for...
No, I'm not okay. I've never taken the position. Is it in my platform? And
it
no.
was when you ran for president in 1988. You called for the abolition of public schools.
I bet that's a misquote. I do not recall that. I'd like to know where that came from, because I went.
And Social Security, you're okay on Social Security now.
I think we need to offer the kids a chance to get out. But right now, if we don't save the money, we can't take care of the other. For instance, Social Security. I've never voted to spend 1 penny of Social Security money. So I'm the one that has saved it. Now, if I save the money in this military operation overseas, I say take that money, and I say this constantly, don't turn anybody out in the street. The people we have conditioned Yes, technically we shouldn't have them. It would be nice to get rid of them. But I would say take care of the people that are dependent on us. Let them, and the only way you can do that is cut spending. If we don't, they're all going to be out in the street. Because right now, Social Security beneficiaries are getting 2% raises. Their cost of living is going up 10%. A dollar crisis is going to wipe them all out. That's my point.
When I looked at your record, you talk about big government and how opposed you are to it. But you seem to have a different attitude about your own congressional district. For example, the Congress decided to send billions of dollars to victims of Hurricane Katrina. Guess how Ron Paul voted? Quote, is bailing out our people that chose to live on the coastline a proper function of the federal government, he asked, and you said no. And yet this, Paul's current district, which includes Galveston and reaches into the Brazoria County, draws a substantial amount of federal flood insurance payments for your own congressional district. This is the Houston Chronicle. Representative Ron Paul has long crusaded against a big central government, but he also represented a congressional district that's consistently among the top in Texas in its reliance on dollars from Washington. In the first 9 months of the federal government's 2006 fiscal year, it received more than $4 billion. And they report, the Wall Street Journal, 65 earmarked targeted projects, $400 million, that you have put into congressional bills for your district, which leads us to the Congressional Quarterly. The earmark dossier of Dr. No. There isn't much that Dr. Ron Paul thinks the federal government should do. Apparently, though, earmarks for his district are okay. Yes. Paul is the sponsor of no fewer than 10 earmarks in a water resources bill, all benefiting his district. The Gulf Intercoastal Waterway, $32 million. The sunken ship you want to remove from Freeport Harbor. The Bayou Navigation Channel. They talk about $8 million for shrimp fishermen. Why would you load up?
You got it completely wrong. I've never voted for an earmark in my life.
No, but you put them in the bill.
I put them in because I represent people who are asking for some of their money back. But it doesn't cut any spending to vote against the earmark. And the Congress has the responsibility to spend the money. Why leave the money in the executive branch and let them spend the money?
That's like saying you voted for it before you voted against it.
Nah, come on, Tim. That has nothing to do with that.
You put it in the bill and get the headlines
No, I make
back
the request.
home,
They're not in the bill.
Then you know it's going to pass Congress, and so you don't refuse the money.
Well, no, of course not. It's like taking a tax credit. If you have a tax credit, I'm against the tax system, but I take all my tax credits.
But if you
I want to get their money back for the people.
You would say no pork spending in
No,
my
that's
district.
not it. They steal our money. That's like saying that people shouldn't take Social Security money. I don't advocate that.
All right,
I try to save the system, make the system work.
Let me ask you
I
this.
think you have it all mixed up.
Well,
you're confused.
It's all facts.
You're confused.
This is the Wall Street Journal. You load up the bills with special projects.
No, you don't.
You do. You deny that. You have
How many of them ever got passed? But the whole point is we have a right and an obligation.
They pass, you vote against them, but you take the money.
You don't quite understand.
Okay.
They take our money from us, and the Congress has the authority to appropriate, not the executive branch. And I'm saying that I represent my people. They have the request. It's like taking a tax credit, and I put it in. The whole process is corrupt.
All right, let me ask you this.
I vote against everything.
But
I vote against it, so I don't endorse the system.
But when it passes overwhelmingly, you take the money back home.
I don't take it. That's the system. I'm trying to change that system. To turn it around and say I'm supporting the system, I find it rather ironic and entertaining.
When you stop taking earmarks or putting earmarks in the spending bills, then I think you'll be consistent. Let me ask you about this. Let me ask this. Term limits. You ran on term limits. I think we should have term limits for our elected leaders. You've been in Congress 18 years.
But I never ran on voluntary term limits. There's a big difference. I didn't sign a pledge for a voluntary term limit. Matter of fact, some of the best people that I worked with who were the most principled came in on voluntary term limits. Some of them broke their promises and some did, and they were very good people. So some of the good people left. And it's true, I didn't run on that, Tim. You're wrong on that. I support term limits. You know, I voted for all. We had 16 votes one time on term limits, and I voted yes for them. But voluntary term limits is a lot different than compulsory term limits. It's good to have a turnover, but that isn't a solution either. It's the philosophy of government that counts.
But if you believe in the philosophy of term limits, why wouldn't you voluntarily limit?
It's one of those. It's one of those things that's not. I mean, you don't see that on campaigning on that. I mean, I don't think it's a solution. Philosophy is the solution. What the role of government ought to be. So if you have a turnover and the same people come in and they believe in big government, nothing good is going to come of it.
Let me ask you about immigration, because that's a big issue here, and there has been a profound change in your thinking on that. Back when you ran for president in 1988, Libertarian quote, as in our country